Welcome back to AFTV and the Tactical Insight Show. I'm here with Graham to, yes, talk about Michael Oliver and the decision. But, and I really want to get this in because on Forever Arsenal, we had a really good conversation about referees and everything, and we're going to do that from a data perspective. I thought Arsenal did really well in this game. Before the red, 10v11 and then 10v10. And I think it's really important before we go into the stuff that everyone's talking about, and we will have those conversations, I think it's really important that we give credit to the team. That hasn't been something we've been able to really do in abundance for probably quite a while, but I think they deserve immense credit, Graham. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, mate. Yes, I think you are right there. I think today's show is primarily going to focus on the decision that Michael Oliver took on Saturday that sent off Miles Lewis-Skelly. And Arsenal found a way to win when they were down to 10. And I think one thing I want to say first of all is that as a football fan, I think I'm representative of most football fans, whatever club you support. I want to see a game 11v11. I do not want to see players sent off unless it's absolutely the last resort. And you can't tell me on Saturday that that was the last resort. That was no more for me than a reckless challenge and a yellow card. But Michael Oliver made that decision. And where the PGMOL, I think, giving themselves problems is that basically, if they're reviewing that and they're not seeing that as an error, I think the game's gone. I really do. I really do think the game's gone. Alan Shearer called it one of the worst decisions he's seen for some time, James. But despite another freakish incident, credit the team, credit Mikel Arteta, we stayed in the title race, albeit we're still a long way behind Liverpool.
I was watching Football Culture Movement, FCM, on DR Sports, and they were saying, you know, because there was the Ndiaye yellow card as well for, I think making a seagull gesture or something, and he got a yellow card for that. And I think people just sort of stopped and went, you know, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? What's going on? And I think the bigger conversation around the PGMOL has to be what their responsibility is in this game. As much as just the decisions, it's also what do we really want here? And we'll get to all that.
I think they've got a responsibility to the game of football.
Yeah.
At the moment, their decisions are, in my opinion, ruining games of football.
Yeah.
They've got a responsibility to the game. They've got the laws to uphold, but at the same time, they've got a responsibility to the game, to the fans. Fans pay a lot of money to watch football, James. I pay £75 to £100 to watch Arsenal every game. I do not want to see 11v10. And I do not want to keep coming on Tactical Insight every week discussing 11v10. And we're going to talk again today about Arsenal having to go 5-3-1 again. So I've watched that decision so many times yesterday, and I felt for Miles Lewis-Skelly. I don't think he's that type of player, but I do think that the common sense, it should have been, he should have been sent to the screen by Darren England, and it should have been overruled. Let's talk about what we did do well against Wolves, and there's plenty of it. 9 shots each, 4 on target each. They had slightly more of the ball, but our XG of 1.38 better than their 0.68. I'm surprised they even had a little bit more of the ball, but I guess that's explained by the 25-30 minutes where we were a man down. 50 final third entries each, 1.3 expected threat to their 0.6, 20 zone 14 touches their 15, and a 64% field tilt, I think, illustrates much more than that possession stat that Arsenal still did very, very well. Even with 10 men, I thought the intensity and drive to try win that game when a man down was really good. They made 27 tackles to our 21, 1 interception more for Arsenal, almost double the clearances for Wolves, and very little in the pass per defensive action. I did think Wolves actually went to press us quite well, and at one point in the first half were doing a good job of it. Now, one of the big talking points going into this game was that Waneri and Lewis-Skelly were both starting. The Michael Oliver decision ruined both their days because of the red for one and the sub for the other. But I have to say, I think Arteta got it right taking off Waneri. We'll explain why in a sec. But I like this from Statman Dave, saying this is the third time in history that Arsenal started 2 players aged 18 or under in the Premier League. Upson and Anelka versus Coventry, Fabregas Song versus Sunderland, Waneri, Lewis-Skelly. All of those in 98, 2006 and 2025. So it's a rare occasion when it happens, and I think it is a round of applause and appreciation for Hale End and these young players coming in when it does, so well done to them. Now, in that first half, we're going to take it to the tactical pad. What I found quite interesting about it was that I think Lewis-Skelly and Rice's dynamic is starting to evolve a little bit. Now, we've got the 3-4-3 here for Wolves, and we know that they can drop
into this kind of shape, out of possession. And Martinelli, look, had a tricky day, to be fair, and I think it's a shame that having played so well on the left, he was moved to the right, but it was what it was. I actually wondered, whether he was going to play Martinelli on the left and Nwaneri on the right, with Trossard in the 10. I wondered whether he was going to do that, but he didn't. Now, watching Nwaneri in that half space, trying to combine with Martinelli, you wonder whether Rice is going to move forward, as we've talked about so many times on this show. But he's a little bit closer to Partey, and we saw Lewis Skelly getting more into this area with Gabriel, Saliba, and we know Timber offers the overlap, but he's also one of the three in build-up. So we're looking at something like that. But the amount he was getting that little bit further forward from Rice, and actually we were getting at that Wolves in between, in this space here, which I'll illustrate in blue, this space here in between the back five and the four was really open for Arsenal. I've not made it look very big, but it genuinely was. And I think this that you sent through from Cannon Stats illustrates what I'm talking about, the shape in the first half, with Rice quite central, Partey a bit deeper, also helping him build up so Timber can go forward, and Lewis Skelly really being that connector with Trossard.
Yeah, I think Lewis Skelly is obviously a midfielder, isn't he?
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be so surprised that he's doing these sort of things. And for a guy of his age, it does seem amazing he's doing so. But let's just look at his profile. He's a very powerful physical player, even at 18. And he's able to draw pressure, ride tackles, and he's an athlete.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be surprised that he's the one getting forward. And I think the dynamic of Partey and Rice at times in a two, particularly away from home, does suit the team. And he can get forward and combine on that left-hand side. And as you rightly said, that's what he was doing a lot in the first half.
Yeah, totally agree. Then the red card happens. And again, we're still just going to wait before we fully go into it, because we need to give some credit here. So Lewis Skelly sent off you go. Real shame. Nwaneri subbed off. And the substitution was, where is he? Calafiori comes on. Could be deemed a very negative substitution, a bit like when Sterling came off against Bournemouth. But it's not about the profile of player you have on the pitch that determines whether you are negative, pragmatic or proactive and attacking and brave and whatever word you want to use. It's about the way you shape them up, and it's about the way you use them. Now, what I found fascinating about this was I felt that Martinelli did what he did on the touchline. Calafiori had license to go forward. Now, Timber did overlap, and we'll get your thoughts on this as well, Graham, because I know that you thought Timber was offering something on that side massively. But the big clue for me was that Rice moved to the right 8 and Trossard tucked in a little bit. So you still had, yes, a kind of a back five out of possession, but you actually had a right foot on the right and a left foot on the left, giving us something in terms of, width, in terms of attacking threat. And actually, it showed with the goal as Martinelli whips it into the box from one end, Calafiori gets in on the end after they try to clear at Wolves. And actually, this was really clever from Arteta. What did you make of his subs at 10 men?
I think he got it absolutely spot on. The profile of the players, the player that he brought on for the team shape. And I think the difference in this game from previous games when we've gone down to 10 men, James, as I said to you when I came up today, was I thought we played that slightly further forward.
Yeah, for sure.
We've retreated a bit in previous games when we've been down to 10. This time I think, we're higher up the pitch in that shape. I thought the dynamics of the team, I thought Calafiori at times was playing almost like a left wing back, getting forward on that left-hand side. And I thought Rice was dropping into that right half space. Yeah. And Timber was one bombing on that right-hand side, which in that passing network we've got in the second half shows him up high an awful lot. So I thought that the two fullbacks in possession were looking to get high, almost like playing as wing backs. Martinelli was dropping, as you said, out of possession to give us that solid base. But I thought the key thing Arteta did in this game, I think he recognised what the Wolves' strengths were when we're out of possession. Their two best players are Nwaneri and Cunha, who both play on that left-hand side, which would be our right side. So I think the two things that he did that I noticed second half was the way we pressed and the way Rice dropped into that right half space. I think when the ball went back to Jose Sarr, the goalkeeper, I think Havertz pressed him from right to left to force him away from his left foot. He's strong on his left foot, onto his right foot to go out to the right side, which is their weaker side. because their best two players play on the left-hand side. So he was, I think, instructed to do that. So they always went out to the right. They couldn't go to the left where their best two players are. And I thought Rice had a particular job out of possession to watch Cunha. Because Cunha is their star player, and I think Rice's role, Rice was exceptional in this game, not only in the way he drove the team up the pitch, but out of possession, the way he dropped and did all that work on that side as well. So I thought tactically that's what we did, but we got further up the pitch when we were down to 10 to keep Wolves pinned in the best we could. We didn't retreat, and that was a positive thing I thought he did. And the Calafiori coming on was not a negative thing, and he's a fine attacking player this season, and
he is.
And he, as we're going to see, he was the one who eventually got the goal.
So that's a really interesting point. So you felt, and I actually agree, listening to what you were saying, that if that's Cunha, because he's the left 10, the left of the front three, and that's Aït-Nouri, you felt that Rice was here to kind of do a job there, which is also why he went to the right of Thomas Partey.
Yeah.
But Aït-Nouri, yes, with Timber there, but also there was that element to get Martinelli back to track, and then you've got your 5. Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. I think when you're playing with 10, what you need to do is you need to recreate those overloads in very different ways across the pitch. So it will be that sometimes Marseille tucked in so Timber could bomb on. It will be at times that Martinelli was the wing back as well. And there's kind of different evidence and data that we found to support what we're saying. So if I show you this, for example, this is the player influence map between both red cards via, I forgot the app and I really want to give them credit. Give me 1 sec. It was, I'll find it in a sec. Anyway, Stat Zone, there we go. Stat Zone's the app. Got to give credit. Right. So this is their player influence map. It shows you the average position, how much they're on the ball. I mean, look at Rice, Calafiori tells you the story, Martinelli too. But what I felt that here, this shows Martinelli slightly further up the pitch than Timber, which is expected. Not massively so, but also slightly wider. And Calafiori and Martinelli as our wider players, with Trossard, Partey, Rice and Havertz quite tucked in. Trossard much more tucked in than Martinelli, which is why I never thought it was a 4-4-1. I never felt that Trossard had the same job on the left that Martinelli had on the right. He was much more tucked in, so he could be closer to Partey, Rice and Havertz, and Martinelli was therefore the other wing back. But if I show you this, which you sent us through from Cannon Stats as well, full credit to them, you can see that the passing network has Timber and Martinelli very kind of close together, and Timber was definitely an outlet too. So they had to mix it up from, basically who was the overlapping option, and Timber does that really well. Timber does that anyway. I mean, Timber we can play in build-up with him in a 3, and then he'll just bomb forward. So I think he was probably instructed to keep doing the same things. But generally, I like the dynamic, and I thought this was really clever from Mikel.
Yeah, and I think that when we discussed this before the show, I think when you're playing that shape, you just got players rotating in different positions. So we talked about Martinelli, it could be Rice dropping back there, or Martinelli dropping back. There was lots of different permutations, but ultimately, that was the shape he went with. Yeah. And that was the shape I think that worked. Great credit to Arteta and to the team, because they knew they had to get a win. Liverpool, they probably would have known or expected to beat Ipswich, and they were already 3 up by half time. So we had to get the win to actually level what Liverpool did on the day, to equal what Liverpool did on the day. So we had to go for it. And I think it was a really positive thing. It looked negative, but it was positive and it worked. Yeah, totally agree. And also, we've talked about what they did so well, 10v11 there, Arsenal in the second half, but I felt the first half we weren't good. A lot of people said we were boring. I think, look, you're going to a side that are fighting for their lives, under a new manager, have some very good players. Molineux's never been easy. That's 4 points, and you're doing it without Saka and Ødegaard. I thought there was plenty to be positive about from an attacking perspective. Kai Havertz, I think, should have scored 2 goals in the first half, certainly 1 at least. And I actually thought we were constantly playing through the lines and running at their back 4. Were we genius in our build-up? Was everything free-flowing? No, but I don't also expect it to be when this is, game 8 of January, and we've got 2 really key attacking players missing, and, we haven't been in our best form. I could kind of forgive that. Yeah, I think that we got some really good crosses into the box. Havertz should have done, in my opinion, better with at least one of those 2 chances he had. He should have directed it away from the goalkeeper instead of straight out the goalkeeper. Brilliant cross in, I think, from Trossard. But there was great movement. We've been crying out for more quicker passing. Yeah. And I thought we did play through the lines quicker. And we got out into a good position, got some good crosses in, got the overloads in for the crosses, and had chances. We just didn't take them. Havertz, I will give Havertz credit, even though he missed those 2 chances. I felt that his work rate in this game, the amount of ground he covered, we haven't got that graphic today, but I think he's up there now with ground covered in the Premier League for any player in the league this season. The amount of work he puts in.
Well, he's in the top 5.
He's in the top 5, yeah. I just think he worked so hard in this game. But, you know, didn't take his chances. But in answer to your question, we were good in that first half. I think we were, deserving to be ahead. And I can't recall David Raya making a save. There was that one good movement from Wolves where they got a cross into the back stick and the guy volleyed it over the bar. That was their big chance. But I thought apart from that, we were very comfortable defensively out of possession and very good in possession.
Can I touch on that Kai Havertz work rate thing for a sec? Because some clips did the rounds of him like falling to his knees at full time, looking shattered. And the play, you know, and a lot of fans on Twitter were saying, look how hard this guy works, poor guy, sort of getting slandered by Arsenal fans, blah, blah. And I've been saying on Forever Arsenal, even through Kai Havertz's bad performances, I've been saying he works super hard, he tries, he gives it. And people often replied to me saying, stop being so soft, you know, that's the bare minimum, that's what we expect, just say what you think. And I'm like, but I am saying what I think. Didn't play well enough, but his work rate's tremendous. And people always say, well, that's a given. It's not a given. It's not a given that every player works that hard every single game. Is there a lack of quality? Sure. Is he a starting? We can talk about all that. Is there a lack of consistency? Should he be finishing his chance? I agree with all that. And I will simultaneously have those conversations and be critical. But the reason I always want to mention his hard work, even when I'm being critical of the player, is because I don't think it's normal. And when things go wrong, and when a club's not performing well, us as fans always go, you're not even playing for the badge, you don't even care. But when you've got a player who is, do they not therefore deserve some sort of grace and some sort of benefit the doubt to a degree, or some sort of context when you're talking about the performances? Is it not worth mentioning? And I personally think it is. And
it's not just his work rate, it's what he offers to the team. He comes short in build-up. Whenever you look at sort of like Arsenal passing networks, you always find him average position in the team is on that right-hand side.
Yeah.
So he's drifting into the right space, and then he's getting into the box as well. He's doing so much for the team, James.
But
he's just there's a question mark about his goal scoring this season, missing chances. He did have a bad week in the 2 cup games. But he's up there. His goals this season are even better than last season. I'm not saying that he's the answer to our problems at centre forward. We are looking, I think, for a striker. That, you know, everyone knows Arsenal. Arteta wants a striker now, but he has his goal return this year has been okay without being top notch.
Sure.
But he's added to that his work rate in the team in various positions on the pitch, helping players out. He was immense when Saka was out of the team, when Odegaard was out of the team doing that work. That's why he's up there. And you talk about bare minimum, but I know lots of great players, even one who played for Arsenal, who's no longer at the club, who was always criticised for his work rate. You know, so you say it's a given, but not all players work to that level, do they? So I think his performance on Saturday, I think, was one of the reasons the team got over the line.
And now it's time for the Michael Oliver segment. Let me start by reading it. I think this is important. It's the PGMOL statement. And I've done a video coming out on the Gooniverse, it might be out by the time this is out, this show, where I explore the line between what's abuse and what's criticism, what's fair for us to say, what's not, and why are we so angry? Why has this all happened? So if you want my full thoughts on that, it's there. But I've asked that question, I think it's important we do. But here is what the PGMOL had to say. We are appalled by the threats and abuse directed at Michael Oliver following Wolves Arsenal. No official should be subject to any form of abuse, let alone the abhorrent attacks aimed at Michael and his family in the last 24 hours. The police are aware and a number of investigations have commenced. We're supporting Michael, all those affected, and are determined to tackle this unacceptable behaviour. Sadly, it's not the first time a match official has been forced to deal with threats in recent times. We will continue to support all investigations. I speak for Graham and everyone at AFTV. We don't condone abuse, we don't condone hatred, threats, death threats, anything directly to Michael Oliver, to his family, anything like that. And there is a line of language that you absolutely cannot cross. Now, I think that's a slightly blurred line. I think there's certain things that are difficult. What's criticism, what's crossing the line? Is there such a thing as a pile-on? Can there be a straw that broke the camel's back where actually maybe people aren't saying certain things, but it's just the sheer amount that is going to someone? I think we need to be mature in everything we do and think about these things. The one thing I do want to say, though, about this statement is the reason things have got personal, and that's not okay all the time, well, the abuse isn't, but the reason I think things have got personal at times is because the decisions that Michael Oliver has given against us feel, I'm not saying feel personal. I can't pretend they don't, Graham. I can't pretend that, and we're going to go through the list of red cards, but I can't feel that it's not personal. You sent some great data. Sorry for talking on loads. This is actually, a lot of this is Graham's brilliant analysis and insight and research, but I just want to read what you sent through. Who scored of Michael Oliver giving Arsenal 8 red cards in 55 games? You've counted 7 of them. 54 in 54 games. Between 2015 and up to January 2025, so we're looking at about 9 to 10 seasons there. 23% of Arsenal's total while refereeing just 12 of Arsenal's games. Arsenal games represent just 6% of the 968 games he has refereed. He has given Arsenal players 12% of the red cards that he has given. It feels personal. It just does. I know it might not be, but it just feels like, and we'll go through the list of reds. Does it feel, before I go on, does it feel, because I've talked for loads, I'm sorry, does it feel personal to you, Graham?
Well, first of all, I will say I don't condone any of that sort of language that he's getting and his family are getting, and I hate that. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things, one of the problems we've got with social media. It's awful. But he's not the only referee that gets it, of course. Anthony Taylor gets a lot of abuse from Chelsea fans. We talked about David Coote, didn't we? So it's what's wrong in society. It's a curse, and I don't know how you deal with it on social media. It's part of everyday living now, where people sit behind keyboards and do what they do, and I think it's wrong. Mm-hmm. So I don't condone it. But when you look at the numbers, it does feel to me as though he's applying the letter of the law to Arsenal, and he's not doing it to other clubs. And an example of that was the Kovacic incident at the Emirates last season, when he was, I think he was booked, was he, for the tackle on Odegaard?
Should have been a straight red.
Which was a straight red. We've looked at it so many times, and that was serious foul play. Mm-hmm. You see, and then in the second half, I think it was, Declan Rice, he did another tackle from behind on Declan Rice, or a bad tackle on Declan Rice. Well, that was at least a yellow. He should have sent him off, because it would have been, but he chose not to. Mm-hmm. And we got the numbers of how he gives out red cards in Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool, haven't we, to prove the fact. So it does seem that he's refereeing Arsenal by the letter of the law. Another example was the Martinelli sending off at Wolves, 2 yellows in the same passage of play. Is it freakish? Is it he's refereeing by the letter of the law? Does it feel as though he applies different refereeing to us than he does to other clubs? It feels that way, doesn't it? I'm sure that he's a very good referee, but he makes lots of mistakes, right? And a lot of them seem to be to Arsenal, and that's why I think it feels personal, doesn't it? But that doesn't excuse anybody.
The key word is feels.
Feels, yeah. It doesn't excuse anybody saying the things they have been saying about him on social media.
I think the PGMOL can help this by taking more accountability, and us not feeling both gaslit when we are, listening to the reviews, whether it be Howard Webb, Dermot, whoever, but also not feeling ignored when, these issues happen and basically nothing's done about it. And when that happens, when you feel like you're not getting through, fans are going to be louder. Now, that doesn't excuse the abuse, the threats. Of course it doesn't. I mean, I can't even have to look down the camera and say this. Of course it doesn't. My point is, if the PGMOL can hold more accountability, and there can be a feeling that there's consequences for mistakes, that they will actually look into things like 3 very, very, very strange decisions he's been given, 3, 4, 5 very strange decisions he's been giving in Arsenal games. If fans feel like something's being done, I think that immediately just turns the boiling point down. It just turns the temperature down on things a little bit. But because we don't have that, the PGMOL are so defensive, it makes the situation worse. Now let me get your thoughts on these red cards then. Coquelin versus Spurs, 2016.
I think I was looking at these yesterday and trying to work out whether I felt he was right in what he did, and I think that I've got no complaints. That was 2 yellow cards. The second one, he took a Spurs player down out wide to deny an attack. So for me, that was a justified red card.
I've got no problem with that one either. Maitland-Niles versus Leicester. This is the one I kind of remember the least. What do you think? He
was on a yellow, and then Maddison, he made a tackle on Maddison, and he sent him off for the tackle, and Maddison dived, basically. In real time, I remember watching the game. I did a show on it with Robbie when I was doing these shows with Robbie, criticising it at the time. I remember watching it on I think it was on the Sunday. Yeah. And you could see that it was not a yellow card. You could see that Maddison made more of it, and he chose to give him a yellow. It was a wrong decision, so that shouldn't have been a red card.
Okay. Xhaka versus Liverpool, 2022 Carabao Cup semi-final.
That was the long ball from defence, where Xhaka is defending, and he doesn't see the player coming over the back of him, and he makes a challenge, which I think he deems serious foul play. I think that's borderline. I
had no problem with it at the time.
I think you give him the benefit of the doubt and say, look, I can understand that.
Yeah, I had no problem with it at the time. I think high foot into the chest,
fair enough.
He's through on goal. Yeah. So that's, probably 2 he's got right. Martinelli Wolves.
I just think that's a shocker. I really do.
I think that is one of the worst.
That is one. You would never see that in a football match again, where you two yellow cards for the same passage of play, one for denying a throw, and then he plays advantage and then a tackle. You should just use common sense. You should only really send someone off if it's absolutely the last resort. Did he have to do that? What made him think at that moment I should send him off?
Yeah.
Why didn't you just give him a yellow card? That was a wrong decision.
I honestly think he made up a law. I mean, I don't know if he did. Maybe somewhere.
He made it all about him. He made it all about him, didn't he? And that's the criticism that he got.
Too clever. Yeah.
And I just think that was a shocking decision.
But this is why it feels personal. This is why when I see that kind of decision, there's 2 more we're going to go into in this list. Yeah. When I see that kind of decision, it's exactly why it feels personal, Graham. Because I think I've never in my life, not just Michael Oliver, but no referee have I ever seen a referee. How many times does the player go for a tackle, but then the attacking player stays on their feet, and then they go for another one? Is it 2 yellows for that? It's never, ever, ever been the rule. So that for me is the worst one on this list. Vieira Burnley.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I don't. I remember the time thinking, is it that bad? But yeah, I think he caught him quite high and he was a bit late. And
it's a red card for me.
No problem. Trossard Man City is the second worst on this list for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think that was a terrible decision. And we were at that stage of the season, weren't we, in the season where players were getting booked for kicking the ball away when on a yellow card, another yellow, they're being sent off. It doesn't happen anymore, does it? Nope. But I just think it reminded me a bit of that Robin van Persie incident in Barcelona, where he didn't hear the whistle when he kicked it and he got sent off in the Champions League. Yeah. And this was similar. I don't think Trossard heard the whistle. It was only a few seconds. How could he?
No, 0.8 of a second.
And the other point that Oliver could have considered then, was he actually denying them taking a quick free kick? Because the Man City player was on the floor. Yeah. So they was never going to take a quick free kick. It was a shocking decision.
Yeah, the man who doesn't want to ruin the big games, but he was happy to do that one.
He didn't want to ruin the big game when he didn't send off the Man City player at the Emirates last year, but he did it for us.
Lewis Skelly. Okay, I've been sitting on this one across the weekend, reflecting lots. I'm going to touch on something that the PGMOL have said in response, that when I reflect on it, I said myself the words, this is one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. It's a bad one. It probably makes my top 5-10% of bad decisions I've seen. But it's not the worst. It's a cynical tackle, and he has caught him quite high, but it's still a shocking decision. Yeah. And I think there is that line between it's a shocking decision and it's like the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. I think them not drawing the lines when Tony was offside, Brentford, I think that was worse. I think Bruno Guimaraes elbowing Jorginho in the head was worse. I think João Pedro swinging an elbow and not getting sent off was worse. And I think 2 others I've said on this list were worse. So that's what I'm saying, guys. I still think it's a shocker, but I don't think it's the worst. And yeah, maybe the narrative got a bit sensationalised and I was a part of that, but still a bad decision. And yeah, we've touched on it.
It's reckless but it's not serious foul play.
No, it's not.
And how can he judge that is serious foul play? I really, because he's got so many factors to take into account. And I think when you hear Alan Shearer say it's the worst decision he's seen for a long time, that tells me that, you know, and Ian Wright came out over the weekend and did a video on it, and players who, and this is why I think, and I was exploring this with you today, that sometimes I think referees make mistakes. The PGMOL put a guy on VAR to look at that, and if it's a referee, another referee, particularly because Michael Oliver is highly thought of in that setup, they're not going to overrule him.
No, it's true.
I think sometimes what the game needs is an ex-pro, you know, if you can train someone up to actually be in the VAR room, who understands the game, like Ian Wright does, who understands what challenges, when players make challenges, understands that part of the game. If you had an ex-pro in there on VAR, maybe that's a solution, you know, because over the weekend, I think virtually every ex-player that you can imagine came out and said that was the wrong decision. So much so that the PGMOL made a statement that they were not happy with all these ex-pros coming out making not backing Michael Oliver or saying they thought it was wrong. The only one who actually backed him was Steve Nicol, who clearly hasn't got over at Anfield 89, has he? All the other players, ex-players, came out and said it was a bad decision. Shearer said it's the worst decision he's seen for a long time. He made a mistake, and I think it should have been overruled on VAR. But when you've got a guy on VAR who respects Michael Oliver as being one of the main men in their institution, in their cult, or whatever you want to call it, he's not going to overrule him, is he? And that was the problem on Saturday.
My message to the PGMOL, because the statement they put about Michael Oliver, you know, some people think it's deflection. I think ultimately if there's abuse, you've got to address it, fine. This line that they are disappointed about what pundits and ex-pros have been saying, they feel that it's been a bit sensationalised. I saw Darren Lewis talking about it on Sky Sports. Here's my message to the PGMOL, okay?
Sky have deleted that now, anyway. They
deleted the tweet, I think, but it did air. Yeah. So here's my message to the PGMOL, not that they're listening to James on AFTV. The game is not about them. It's just not about them.
It's for the fans.
If you've got football fans, pundits and media, and literal footballers and ex-footballers all saying, and managers all saying, that they do not want players sent off for this, that they don't want players sent off for kicking the ball away 0.8 seconds after they've heard the whistle, then please, for the love of, just listen to them. Because the arrogance you've got to have to be sat in another room going, but it's high, but the studs were showing, but it was reckless, but it was... Shut up. Respectfully, please. Because we're all telling you, your job as the PGMOL and the referees, their job is to manage and run the spectacle and keep the entertainment and keep it as fair, and do your best to keep it 11 v 11. If you have to intervene, you have to intervene. It should be something you don't want to do. But the way Michael Oliver pulled out that red card, from the quick split-second angle he had, when he knew VAR could have jumped in and, you know, corrected his mistake if it was a red, how quickly he pulled out that red card tells me that they want to make these decisions, and it goes back to the word personal I used. Because I don't see how anyone could want to make that decision unless they want to feel like they're a part of the game. I just can't look beyond that. And I've 2 days slept on this now, and I've done a very, very fair and balanced video on the Gooniverse, and I've tried to talk about, you know, looking at the bigger picture and the responsibility we have. But my message to the PGMOL would be, we as fans, and whoever need to do better in our critique, sure, and whoever's being abusive, utterly outrageous, and social media companies to do more to stamp that out. But the PGMOL have their part to play in this. I'm sorry they do. And that's why I feel so aggrieved still, that they can listen to what pundits and pros are saying and go, we can't believe that you're being so harsh on us. Come on, take some responsibility.
I think everything you said, you're absolutely right, spot on. Couldn't agree more. They have responsibility. They're custodians of the law of the game. I get that. But they've also got a responsibility to the game of football itself and to the fans. I want to watch 11 v 11, as most fans do. We don't want to see players sent off. It should be the absolute last resort. Yet the laws keep changing that enable them to make these decisions, which they don't need to make. And I think that's the problem. Coming back to Oliver, and I don't know if you've got that stat today.
Yeah.
Against the over the last 2 or 3 years, Arsenal, Liverpool and Man City have been the biggest 3 clubs in the league, right? He sent off 7 Arsenal players in 54 games, right? Liverpool and Man City, he's refereed a combined 106 games of Liverpool and Man City, and he sent off 1 player, a Man City player. I'd like to know who that Man City player is.
That's it, so it's a Liverpool player. Sorry, Liverpool player.
That player must be feeling bloody aggrieved that he sent him off, because how come you sent me off? You haven't sent off any else for Liverpool and Man City, but he sent off 7 Arsenal players. We've been through every one. I think it would be not remiss of me to say that Arsenal, some of it is Arsenal's own fault. Arteta did have a problem with red cards when he came into the club. We still have a lot of players sent off, generally, and it's not just about Michael Oliver. And this is something that we need to address in our club, and Arteta needs to address that. But if you look at some of the decisions that Oliver has taken to send Arsenal players off, we've looked at it today, and out of those 7, what is our final count that we think he should have sent off?
I think he got Coquelin right, I think he got Xhaka right, I think he got Vieira right. I give him 3 out of 7. The Maitland-Niles one, I can't really remember it too well.
I think that was wrong.
So we think you think the Maitland-Niles one was wrong. The Martinelli, Trossard and Lewis Kelly.
Yeah, I think
4.
he's got. If
3 of them were huge.
Yeah, 3 huge in games that decided matches in a way, cost us points. If it had been 3, I don't think we'd be having this debate, would we?
No, it wouldn't feel personal.
We wouldn't. But I'm not saying he's. It just the numbers tell you that he's applying the letter of the law to Arsenal more than he is at any other club, and that's the kindest thing I can say.
Totally agree. Now we don't have round-up stats, but I will leave you with this that you sent through, Graham, as well. Arsenal play 17.4% of the season with 10 men. The Premier League average is 5.3% for red cards. It doesn't feel normal. And when I look at the 4 red cards we've had this season, and you're right, in Arteta's time, red cards have been a problem. We have addressed that on this show. We went through every red card and talked about where we've gone wrong. But for the 4 we've had this season, the Saliba one is the only one I think probably was a red, but I think...
I didn't think it was a red.
No, fine.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you again, Sky. I can remember on that Monday morning, they literally, to justify it, they were trying to work out the speed of Ben White, who was the covering player, him running back without the ball against the Bournemouth centre forward. I can't think of his name. Was it
Evan Nielsen?
Yeah. He was running through, and they did it, their various speeds, and they calculated right... Benjamin White would only run at this speed and he would run at that speed, so he wouldn't have caught him, but he would have had the ball. So I think that was a dubious red. It does feel to me that every freakish decision this season has gone against Arsenal. Yeah, it does feel that, and you're seeing
the penalty at Brighton.
You're seeing the penalty at Brighton, the clash of heads penalty, and then we've had 1 or 2 go our way. Yeah, don't get me wrong. For sure. The penalty against Man United wasn't a penalty. The corner against Tottenham wasn't a corner. Yeah. But we're talking about refereeing making decisions here that have led to red cards primarily. And it seems like everything that could go wrong for Arteta this season has gone wrong. I think the comments he made back in November 2023, would it have been?
Yeah, 23 it was.
About the PGMOL, he called him a disgracia, or whatever he called it, after that incident against Newcastle. I think since then they've been queuing up to apply the letter of law to Arsenal more than, not just Michael Oliver, they've been queuing up to apply the letter of law against Arteta's players. And I think that's, so everything that you see happening to Arsenal on the pitch this season, you will never see those sort of incidents in games again. You don't see players on a yellow kicking the ball away, sent off. You've never seen a head clash penalty given in the Prem. You've never seen a guy sent off when he's brought someone down 90 yards away from goal. Those sort of things have been happening to Arsenal. You'll never see those again. And I just feel as though the team, to still be second in the league, Arteta still has a second in the league with all this going on, I think is a credit to the players and to Arteta.
And for everyone watching, it's not to say that we don't think Arsenal have their problems. We've addressed those. We genuinely won't shy away from talking about what Arsenal do wrong or what Arteta and the players could do better. But this was a long segment, I think rightly so, on the PGMOL and where things have gone wrong. We brought data, and I think we're right to explore it. But there we go. We'll leave it there, everyone. Graham, big thank you. Really, really enjoyed it. 40-minute show, but you know what? I think we had plenty to cover there too. We wanted to give Arsenal their rightful credit. two sides to analyse here. Arsenal doing well with 10 men, the PGMOL too. Big thanks to all who've tuned in. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to the channel so you're kept up to date with everything that's happening here on AFTV, including updates around transfers as we approach transfer deadline day next Monday, I think it is. That's coming thick and fast.
Are we going to get a striker?
I think we'll get a player in,
okay,
including Sven Nipan, but I wish I knew. There we go. Big thanks. Catch you all in a bit.